Welcome to Off Watch, a podcast by The Ocean Race. Now, as we always say, we're taking your suggestions as to who we should be interviewing next. A lot of you asked for this guest, and it only seems fitting. After all, after that nail-biting finish in The Hague at the end of the last edition, we heard from Dongfeng Race Team, courtesy of Carolyn Brouwer, as to what was happening on board the Chinese boat. We heard with Xabi Fernandez the tension on board the Spanish team with Mafre. Now it's the turn of Bouwe Bekking and Team Brunel. But this wasn't the only point to talk to him. All those amazing stories from the Whitbread years, nearly sinking off Cape Horn, and the difficulty in building a team for the last edition at the very last moment. Bouwe Bekking is a legend of the ocean race, having competed in 8 editions. So far, his scorecard can boast 3 third places and 3 second places, but no victories yet. Now, very few people keep coming back to the race to put themselves through another year of physical and mental grueling torture, but Bouwe Bekking is lining up to do the next edition of the race if all goes well in the autumn of 2021. So let me ask you then as a first question, if you do get the victory in the next edition, which I'm sure you're going to be working very hard to do, and many people listening to this will be wanting you to do, if you do get that victory, is that it? Have you scratched that itch then, or do you just keep coming back because this is what you love to do?
Well, of course, I would love to win this race. I will be very honest about that, and that's always the aim. When you start a campaign, that's the first objective is, of course, winning. And I think that's all sailors have that in them, and it's not only sailors. I think it's any sport people who's in there doing their job or their hobby. You like to win, so there's no doubt about that. The question if I would put my boots up in the trees, I very much doubt it, because first of all, I love the race. I think it's the best sailing what you can have. It's no doubt about that. It's also the worst moments in life you can have, but I think that's the fantastic thing, that you can just forget about them. It's so easy. I think that's so nice about us human beings, that we actually can just forget about all the nasty things what you experience. And then I think another really big part is what I like about it is just the team effort and sailing in a team under sometimes very difficult conditions and get the best out of each individual. And I think especially the last part is when you're getting a little older and it's just one of these things. I think I've got a lot to give, and I think even if I would win the next race, there's probably even more to give to a younger generation. So never say never, but maybe my wife says, this is enough, now you want it and you can stay home. But fair enough as well. And I would do that also without a blink.
Sure, okay. I won't hold you to that. You can let us know what those discussions are like at home later. But there's an interesting thing that you mentioned where you talked about the younger generation. We do have to mention the fact that I think it is Wednesday next week, I believe, is going to be your 57th birthday. Have I got that one right?
That's correct.
Now, this interview will go out on the Tuesday, so preemptively, happy birthday from everybody listening into this. The reason that I wanted to bring that up is in no way to just congratulate you on being still somebody at the forefront of a very physical sport at the age that you are, but because you've been involved with the sport for so long, you must have seen so many changes. And that's something I really want to get to. But before I do, I've got one question that, I was reading so much over the last few weeks, kind of preparing for this. Your first race in the ocean race, or back then, the Whitbread round the world race was 85. And this was Philip's Innovator. And you stepped on board. You were on board that team as co-skipper. And I was desperate to try and work out what kind of CV would you have had to step on board that boat and be in such an important role. So can you fill in that blank for me? What was it that you had already experienced, already amassed before that very first start line that meant I can have a bit of responsibility on my shoulders?
Well, I've done a fair bit at that age already in ocean racing, and especially like in the days from the Admiral's Cup. Probably people remember it was you representing your country with 3 boats, So I was sailing on that type of boats. Then I did a couple of transatlantic crossings and some races with great success. Where actually we won a couple on the boats where I was on. But I think the most important part was we had actually nearly a year of preparation. And in the year of preparation, the skipper at that stage, Dirk Nauta, probably saw something in me and said, okay, in case the bad things are going to happen, I'd like you to be in charge and I call you my co-skipper. And in that sense, he was very open because he probably saw some things in me, what he actually liked. And he gave me a fair share of responsibility. And of course, it's besides the co-skipper, I was a watch leader. But I think people shouldn't forget at all, he was the only paid guy on board. And that's of course, one of the things as well. There were probably better sailors than me at that stage, for sure. But they would have been professionals. I think probably one of the first professionals, but that was just not the objective. And so he just probably took me as he thought that I was the best person for the job. And that's why I got it.
And this is at the age of, what, 22? I mean, I mean, not old, not a veteran like you are now, and to have somebody turn around and say, okay, if something was to go wrong, you're going to be the person that everyone's going to follow. Was that something that you wanted, or did that suddenly feel like, oh, I've got quite a bit of responsibility now that not necessarily I want?
I think if I look back, I probably didn't even think a minute about it because that's one of these things. Everything was new. You just have to imagine. We just did, of course, we sailed 2 times across the Atlantic with the boat and did a fair bit of preparation, short distances. I did mostly all the deliveries. So I was responsible without the skipper because he very often drove with his car to the next place because, of course, you had to do things with the sponsors back home. So it was just one of these things. You take it on as a young, because we were a very young group of people, and it just I think came natural. But I wasn't thinking a moment about it. No, I'm the skipper when the skipper is not there, or what will happen in worst case. Dirk gets sick and he can't sail a leg, for example. You don't think about it at that age. So you just take the bull at the horn and go sailing.
And it was a pretty good first entry into the race as well. You know, you finished with a second. Already your CV starting to look pretty strong. I want to bounce further back because I'm wondering, I mean, is it a moment like that? This is a race, big on the world stage. You finish with a second. Your name's pretty high. Like you say, watch leader, co-skipper, you know, you've got a lot of responsibilities. So you can take a lot of pride in that performance. Was that an event that cemented your love for competitive sailing, or you know, what was that first moment where you got into a boat when you were young? Was it an instant love, or was it your parents, you know, throwing you out onto the water to get a nice break on a Sunday afternoon?
Well, of course, it wasn't, even when I was much younger, of course, you start in the dinghy and then you start racing. And I think with all the people who are competing, once they have that in them, they like the competition. They like to win. Of course, I have to be very honest about that because that's just a great kind of doping you can get. Winning is just a fantastic feeling. And then, of course, with the race, when became second place, and that catapulted myself actually into professional sailing. And of course, it's a choice what you have to make. At that stage, Rolf Rollick, probably most people know Udolf Rollick designed from the Alinghi campaign, but Rolf was already very successful and designed very good boats in Germany, especially in Germany. And our boat, Philips Innovator, was one of his designs. So we had a close contact with him, and he brought me actually in contact with a former German owner, Hans Otto Schumann, and he said he's going to build a new boat and he's looking for somebody to run the boat. So being the boat captain, and of course you're getting paid for it. Means you have to move to Germany, and I think it was just one of these things. The German teams were one of the best in the world, and I saw it as an opportunity to become a better sailor and to be in a very competitive team and to learn as much as possible. And that's what basically I did after the race was finished, the Whitbread Around the World race. 2 or 3 months later, I moved to Germany.
What was going to be your career path before that? Because like you say, that was the bit that made you a professional sailor. I mean, we've all got to make a buck here and there. What were you lining up to do?
For me, it was I always, because it's just very honest. I saw the documentaries from Connie van Rietschoten with the Flyer, and people just have to remember in the old days there was not coverage daily, even videos or television. There was just one documentary. Maybe there was a little blink in the line that he won a leg, but at both his races, there was a fantastic documentary. And when I saw that, I said, this is what I wanted to do. And even with that in back mind, I said, okay, how can I make my chances any bigger? So I actually choose to go to nautical school, because I thought if I'm getting a little bit of navigation knowledge, radar, all that kind of things, radio telephony, but of course in the old days was all the communication was done by long range. So I thought if I pass that, then probably my chances will be better to get on board of a boat. So it was never an intention to go to sea. I always wanted to do the race, and then I would see afterwards what would happen, and then I started making my career out of it. I didn't know when I started the race actually doing, so it just came up. There was an opportunity, and I thought this is what I really like to do.
I mean, nowadays, I think there is quite a clear path for a lot of sailors if they want to become a professional. Like you say, there's qualifications. There's even sailing schools. Sign up to us for 8 months and we'll get you these tickets and you will be a professional. Back then, was there any way to go from looking at the documentary, dreaming big, and going, if I walk down this route, I will end up on those race boats?
I think in that sense, it's nothing different than from the old days. Right now as well, I think if you're just young and eager, just do your best. Just what I did as well when I was really young, walk around the docks, look at the docks. I mean, so just the jetties in the harbors. Look where the really good boats are. So you even can just give them a hand with deliveries, scrubbing the deck afterwards. Get a chance. Do you need somebody? And I think in that sense, it's still the same, because I think like right now, of course, there is a lot of sailors who pretend to be professional or want to become a professional. And it's very likely that they're coming out of the Olympic classes because they are already professionals when they're doing the Olympics. But I think there's so many other people, because very often as well with Olympic sailors is that they're doing it either by themselves or just with one other crew member or maybe two other crew members. And it's a big difference to make that, to go sailing with a group of 10 people than that you're just doing it by yourself. So very often, and I think it surprises the people very often, that Olympic sailors don't like to go on the ocean because they just use normally to come every night back, having their coach and doing their own things. And all of a sudden you're coming in an environment where you all of a sudden are maybe not even on the top of the ranking anymore. So it's a tough one for them very often. And of course, if you're sitting for a week or 14 days in a row on the water, a lot of people just don't like it. Very simple. They just hate it. So that's unfortunately a lot of professional Olympic sailors just basically don't make the cut. And I think in that sense, and that's I think always what you do, you try to establish and get a team together where the person, because people who apply and get on board, they're all very good sailors, but especially that mental part and that they fit into a team, that is an as important aspect, so not more important sometimes than being the Olympic gold medal winner.
Really interesting you talk about that mental side of it, because I've always enjoyed the phrase that everybody wants to stand on the top of Everest, but not everybody wants to climb all the way up. I'd love to be up there if someone could, I don't know, helicopter or something. For you, with that mental fortitude that is so vital in a race like this, those first few editions that you did, that first with Phillips Innovator, and then with the Whitbread 60 classes on Windstern and things like that. Did you get tested in a way that proved to yourself that actually I can do this, or was it just it was just a natural fit? Never at any point did you think, oh, this is tougher than I thought?
I think, especially if you go back to the first one, I think that's of course that's the easiest one to speak about in that retrospect. It's we just didn't know what to expect. Hey, that's what I said. We've seen the documentaries. We sailed in warmer waters, and then all of a sudden you're getting down south in the Southern Ocean. And of course, you've heard a couple of stories because our skipper had done it 2 times before the race. So you hear a couple of things, but actually the moment when you're getting down south there, and especially in the old days, there was no restrictions in how far south you could go. So we were sailing at probably 58, 59 south, and icebergs left and right, and you just didn't think about it. And I think at that moment, I just enjoyed it so much. I said, this is just fantastic. And I think that is all. And I think that's the main reason why I'm coming back all the time, because I just realize how nice the sailing can be. And I think that's probably the most important thing, just to realize it's, you have a fantastic sport.
You say you enjoyed it so much being down there, with icebergs towering over the boat. I would assume that a little bit of fear in a situation like that is probably a healthy thing.
I think fear basically didn't happen over there, because it's just one of these. I think especially when you're young, you don't think about it. You just say, oh, so this is like how it is. We have 40, 50 knots of breeze, and we maybe can just hang on with the sail area what we have, and I think you're not getting scared, because it's just one of these things. Well, this is the ocean. This is the Whitbread round the world race. This is how it's supposed to be. And of course, then afterwards, when you grow up a little bit and you've done a couple of more races, actually, oh, bad things can probably happen, or I've been in this situation before. So it's always nice to look back to the first one.
Let's talk to some of those highs and lows then, because you say that things can go wrong. So let's jump to 2005-06, Movistar. You're skippering the boat. I spoke to Chris Nicholson not that long ago, and he was talking about the moment where you guys had to step off the boat on the transatlantic leg. But he also mentioned Cape Horn and you guys coming in towards Cape Horn, doing really well on the leg, second at the time. And then all of a sudden, the boat starts leaking, and it starts leaking quite fast. This was not an incident. It wasn't something that I remembered, but it was interesting to hear it from Chris. It clearly was something that stuck in his mind. As somebody that was skipper on that boat, what was that moment like where you go, hang on a minute, there's water, and a lot of water, inside the hull?
I think just if you compare the two incidents, and I think Chris is 100% right, the Cape Horn experience, let's call it that way, was way more scary, because I think already at that stage, you just knew this is the Southern Ocean. And in the Southern Ocean doesn't have any mercy. Luckily, we were not too far off from Cape Horn, but still, I think it was 300 or 350 miles. But just the moment when it happened, and I think somebody went downstairs, in that sense was very lucky. We were pushing hard, and we were going like a rocket. And it's just one of these things. You enjoy the sailing, and because it is cold, so somebody went down for a cup of coffee and came screaming back on deck and say, we are sinking. So then straight away everybody looking, because we didn't really feel it on the boat at that stage. But you go downstairs, and then if you realize you're standing nearly to your hips into the water, something is not right. So, and especially then realizing you are so far away from land, you only can rely probably on a competitor when it goes bad. And even when you have to go on a life raft, when you sink over there, the chances are not looking very good for you that you actually survive, even in the best life raft and with your survival suits. Because even when other boats try to find you, because there's no other boat, so you're totally by yourself. So I think that was way more scary. Can we get the situation under control? And probably Chris told the story, because we had already some water pumps on board at that stage. It was a really great thing in the regulations. And Chris, because everything was shorted out, he had the smart idea to connect the water pumps directly to the batteries. And
this is where he had to go under the water, I think. I read this somewhere.
He basically had to dive underwater, and I wouldn't have come on the great, and still for Chris, fantastic thoughts at that stage. He connected, and of course got belted quite a bit as well, because that's just with electricity and water is not very good. But he got the pumps going, and in the meantime we closed the hole, which was actually not too bad. But of course, if you have a hole from, I think it was probably 75 by 75, because it was a cover of the canting keel system. So we stuffed, at that stage, we had spinnakers. We stuffed some spinnakers in the hole and basically could stop the water more and more coming in. And then Chris got the pumps connected, and we could slowly but surely empty the boat out. But that was a way more scary situation than what happened with, basically when we had to abandon ship. Because we knew the moment it was happening, we still were like for 14 or 15 hours on board. And of course, I had to make the call. And the good thing was that ABN2 at that stage had diverted to us. They were right next to us. And then it was just a matter of, okay, do I take the decision, yes or no? And of course, you're very hesitant. Because first of all, you say, we're still afloat. Because we had the keel basically tied up onto the rig. We had halyards down through the coach roof, tied around the whole system. And that was basically holding the keel in the boat. But the biggest thing was just that there was the weather conditions who were coming up. There was a huge low coming. And ABN AMRO 2, then Sebastian Joss said, we have to know about this and this time because we have to stay ahead of this huge low pressure, because otherwise I might be jeopardizing even the rest of my team. And then together with Glenn Burke, because he was at that stage the boss at the Volvo Ocean Race, we had a great plan, and we just said, okay, let's just execute it. And of course, I was in contact with our sponsors and with Pedro Campos, and we just said, let's just not take the chance. How proud we will be that we can maybe ride this storm out, and we might bring the boat back. But let's abandon over here and step in the life raft. And we did, and that was all because we talk a lot about all the scenarios, how we do the transfer. It was at daylight, and we did the transfers and basically got safe on board ABN AMRO and sailed off for them going direction of England. And of course, the storm came through, and I think it was about 10 or 15 hours later that the boat actually disappeared off the tracker. And I think another really important thing is, because it's always one of these things when boats are sinking, people just always say, but how big were the waves? There was a ferry going from France to Ireland, a big car ferry, and they blew out all the windows on the bridge that night. So there must have been waves of 10, 12 meters. And of course, that was not, the boat just couldn't hold out. So that was gone. And once we were in England, we went, of course, with search planes around in the latest locations, but we never found the boat back. And that's, of course, sad as such. But I want to say that the Cape Horn as such was way more scary, because it was all of a sudden and you had to act on that moment.
That's a real test for skipper, you. I think, sailors, we spend so much time learning about what to do if the wind shifts this way, or what to do if a competitor tacks on you in this way. And we know how we should react in those situations. Let's go to the Cape Horn one. Let's go to the one that scared you, the one that unraveled very quickly. A crew member comes up and says, we're sinking. Everyone turns to you as the skipper. Looking back, did you do well in that split second to lead and control the situation? Or do you look back at it and think, I was a bit green, I would have done things differently now?
No, I think in the big picture, I think I did a lot of good things I did right. And maybe people remember, because we went into Ushuaia, and there was an interview going on, and where actually but the people from Volvo, from the press department, asked if they could sit in. And then because I was just asking the crew, say, are you not believing in me anymore? Because I was just confronting, and it came on camera, and it was cut in a little bit of a bad way, because afterwards I said this was not the way how the picture was, or how the whole story was told. But I asked all the individuals, is it something against me, or is there no trust in the boat anymore? And there was a couple of guys who didn't have trust in the boat anymore. And actually one person flew to the next stopover. We didn't sail the last part into the finish place. But I think if I look back, not only myself, I think the entire team, because that's still, I make the calls, maybe the really big ones, but it's still a team effort. And I think that's one of the great things. I think what you really experience when the shit hits the fan, because that's what was happening, that you just can be really proud how your entire team operates in that kind of situation. Because it's maybe me making the final calls, but everybody is chipping in 100% at that stage, because everybody is thinking not so much about themselves, but they all think about their loved ones back home. And that's, of course, especially when the skipper, you just always think, I have to bring these guys or girls back to their loved ones, because that's will be the most horrible thing whatever could happen in my career. And maybe I should just tell one more little history, because we're talking about scary things. When Movistar was launched just in the beginning, we actually decided that we would sail from Australia back to Spain. And of course, you're going through the Southern Ocean, because we thought we can learn a lot of things over here. And so we did that trip. We started really late, because that's always one of these things. The boat was new, and a lot of things happened. We broke quite a few things already in the trials. But then we sailed towards Cape Horn, and then we actually broke the 24-hour records, the world sailing record.
Oh, right.
And we did some, I think, out of my head, 525 miles. So that was, everybody was in an array, kind of feeling. And it was just getting windier and windier and windier. And then we had, because we couldn't fill, and there was one of these things, it was the first time ever in probably 40, 45 knots. We didn't have really good furling techniques at that stage. And it went terribly wrong, because it started, I think, 45, 50 knots, and we made a Chinese jibe. And that has been the most scary moment ever in my life, because I think it was like 30 or 40 seconds afterwards, of course, pitch dark, massive waves. Then all of a sudden we saw a light floating behind us. And of course, everybody had their life jackets on.
Yeah.
And at that moment, just my heart and just everything, I was just frozen. And I think it was one of these things, and I think a lot of people should really have that exercise in them, that you have to have a roll call on the numbers of the people, because you can scream and everything around, but people start forgetting about it. But if you go 1, 2, 3, say till 10 or to 12 people who are on board, then you know that everybody's there. And once we did a roll call, thank God, everybody is safe. But just that moment and the feeling, seeing that light disappearing, and we laying on our side doing probably 6, 7 knots, going sideways, and you see that light disappearing. That was, I think, the most scariest moment in my life ever I had on a racing boat.
I think that would be the end. I think for a lot of people in a position of leadership and responsibility, a skipper, I wonder whether, with things like that, bringing the crew together in Ushuaia and talking to everybody and saying, look, what's the problems? What can we do? Is that something you really enjoy, shepherding the young sailors, the new sailers into, and then safely through those moments and making them better sailors?
Well, it's not shepherding, because that is just, I think that's just one of the things when you have a great team. And I think just making a huge step, if you go to the last race, just how we grew as a team with communication and with responsibilities. I think that's always, even like in the earlier days, I always try to be open-minded and direct. And sometimes people blame me for being too direct, but at least I hate it when not all the cards getting on the table. And so if you get all the cards on the table, people can react. Either they shut up, but I rather have that they give input, and that I can learn from it, but everybody in the team can learn from it, and you can make progress. So I probably had that already in my earlier part of the career. I always had that kind of feeling, and that's probably just the person who you are. I think a lot of people can still learn it, but I think especially in moments when things are maybe not going all right, then some might lose their temper or just fall into in some sort of a panic mode, let's say it that way, and make wrong decisions, and then things go wrong. So that's why it's so important that the entire team should be as well prepared for the worst case scenario. And it's even when you're sailing a fastnet race, I think all the skippers, they should just say, guys, let's just go over this. And I think in that sense, Australian sailors, the Sydney Hobart people, they have a fantastic way of explaining things. And because they had that huge bad experience a couple of years ago, and they have got now a way of doing things, but a lot of people can learn from. But I think just say to everybody, even when you sail a 100-miler, let's go out and speak about what can happen, worst case scenarios, how we're going to act, who's doing this, who's doing that. And I think that's a thing what people should think about before they go out.
One of the reasons why people will be able to think about things like that is because, as you say, the ocean race has changed so much over the years that now we can take the video from those moments. You can see what was happening down there in the Southern Ocean. So I want to talk about Telefonica Blue 2008-09. Another really good year for you. So third, really strong. Sailing on those boats, big, powerful boats, being down there. Does it convey to us watching here? Do we get any sense of actually what it's like? I see that moment and my heart stops, but I'm guessing that's just the tip of the iceberg.
It's of course fantastic with the footage what you can have from on board and off the boat, but still the noise, the huge cold temperatures, and just the intensity of the wind. That is still something what people cannot really get into them, because it's just one of these things. It's not they see a clip of like 1 or 2 minutes and say, wow, that's fantastic, but they should just remember this goes on 1 hour, 2 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours, and so on and on and on. So people they are just running on adrenaline. And that is just the thing what it will be, and it will be, people will never realize how hard it is, because it is a bloody hard sport. And I think if we just look back at the last race, we had one day where we had fantastic, I think around 45 knots, we were in the lead, and then I said to Jan Ryu, just imagine that people could see this. I said, just get the drone up in the air. And he just said, but there's a big chance, I've never flown the drone in that much breeze. I said, just get it in the air. If you get this footage, it will just not only will great for our sponsors, but as well just the home front and all the spectators can just really see what it is like. And I think that was one of the great things about just to show that how fantastic sailing can be and how harsh it can be. And that I think was another moment where people saw, holy smoke, this is not just a beer can race.
I mean, the drones were amazing. I do remember all that footage. This poor little drone defenselessly trying to chase down this 65 as you guys were careening through the Southern Ocean. But it's interesting you talk about trying to convey that race and those little things that we don't get to know, because obviously the onboard reporters on board with you, sharing bunks, working really hard. I'm noticing that, you've got a virtual background on at the moment because, we're communicating in your home. There's certain things, it's my home. I don't, have a little bit of privacy. What's it like having an onboard reporter on those moments where suddenly you get overtaken and the onboard reporter puts a camera in your face? Something disastrous has happened. A camera goes in your face. It's important for us watching the race. What's it like for you as a sailor?
Oh, it's just terrible. It's really terrible. It's just, you'd rather punch him or her in the face and say, knock off, you've got better things to do over here. But I think that's one of the things, and I think that's one of the great things about all the people who are on board. They just realize we're here because the sponsors are paying this. I think we have such a great mentality towards the sponsor and even to the race organizers as well, because without Volvo in the past, there wouldn't have been a race. And they just know that these moments are probably can pay a campaign back. We know bad results can be good results in a way, and you can always twist it. But of course, it's terrible. And I think what was not so nice in the last race was that we got allocated OBRs, onboard reporters. So we were shifting from one person to the other thing, and that just didn't work. And that's one of the reasons why now the rules luckily got changed, that everybody can find their own person, because it is such an important part that the OBR is even. And they were in the last race. Some were really like team members, and a lot of context still going on right now. But if you don't have that whole build up, and then all of a sudden something bad is happening, it is way harder to even to speak to somebody who's, you might know him or her pretty well for the time that you've been sailing for 10 days with each other. But still, if there is a bigger bond, then that's, let's just say that there's like a curtain in between that is just disappearing if you have like everybody on the team.
let's go to. You keep teasing me with the last edition, and you know exactly what I'm going to ask you about the last edition. You know what everybody wants to hear about the last edition, but I'm going to leave that moment hanging for just a second longer. I would just want to talk about something I mentioned at the beginning. Considering you've been in this game for so long, you've seen so many changes. One of those changes obviously being from the open aspect of the design to the fixed one design with the VO65s for the last two editions, and of course they'll be in the next one as well. One of the things that when I talk to a lot of people about, boat breakages and, what happened to you with, on Telefonica Blue, you had your bow section break up as well, didn't you? You had leak coming in there. I don't think it correct me if I'm wrong, it didn't go through the bulkhead, but you had the sort of, the a bow damage in there. You were injured at this point, I think, but down below hoping.
How about I was injured actually at the beginning of that storm, but it was Telefonica Black who basically cracked through the middle over there. We came through, basically without any issues. But it was one of the boats, and there was a lot of boats. Ericsson, I think it was Ericsson 3 or 4. They had a big hole in the bow, and luckily just made it to Taiwan, and then actually won the next leg. So.
Yeah. But is it a good thing, do you see, going from boats where with the pursuit of speed, you can make some compromises in strength, reliability, to go from that to we're going to give you a boat that's going to be able to get you around the world. It's up to you what you do with it as sailors. What's your preference?
Well, of course, I prefer the one design concept, and I think they've been proven 100% right. First of all, for us sailors, and I just have to speak especially, of course, about myself. We have the same tool, and if somebody else is better than me, then I have to accept, of course, that they beat me. But it is you having the same tools, and it just says something about the team again, and it's not about the money. Because even like in the last race, we were probably the team with the least amount of budget. We started the last of everybody. And that's not an excuse, because that is a choice. When we knew that we were so late, we said, okay, we probably have a chance to come on the podium. And if we are really good, we might even win it. And I think that was exactly what happened. We were not good in the beginning, but our learning curve was all the time up, and it never went down. And I think... that's why we became fierce opponents for the other two boats in the end, and it was just keep going, keep learning, go faster.
Okay, so let's talk then. Okay, you've reeled me in. I'm gonna talk about the last edition. Obviously, this is the second one with Team Brunel, the VO65. I mean, in the 2014-15 race, you finished second, so you obviously know how to make a 65 go fast, at least in that edition. Then it obviously, when you get to the start line of the 17-18 edition, I mean, you guys were not at the pace that some of the other boats were. And the first few legs, those results must have been disappointing. Where were you in your mindset, in your thinking within that team when, a couple of legs in and you think, we're not closing down the leaders yet? What effect did that have on you?
Well, it's always one of these things. I'm very positive in a way, and of course, and actually quite early in the race already, we knew that we were going all right, and we knew we were not very quick in the big breeze because we just didn't have the experience over there. But already on the leg going into Hong Kong, even that we had, I think, 4 new people on board because we had to make some changes because of circumstances that happened, injured, and somebody was ill back home and had to fly back. So there were a couple of changes. But then on the leg from Hong Kong, we really I started seeing things where I said, shit, we're having a really fantastic team over here, and we're going well. And even that we lost out in the end coming into Auckland, we sailed a very good leg. But of course, then you're coming in Auckland, I think we were second last or last. Then there's of course the pressure is not only from back home, because back home I'm talking sponsors. And that is just the moment that you have to start explaining. And I think that's really important. Like I'm really lucky that Gideon Messing, who's done the race 3 times as a sailor, was our project leader, or my CEO, let's call him that way. So he really understood all the time what it was, and you can explain to him, yeah, and he can see it as well. You are unlucky somewhere. Sometimes that's because that's one of the really bad things about our sport. It can be just that somebody is sailing 1 mile away from you, and the next day he's 100 miles ahead of you. And that's, I can explain it to him, but I can't explain it to a sponsor. So the sponsors were not very happy, and understandable. Right? They say, you're having the world's best sailors, Peter Burling, Carl Langford, all these guys and girls you're having. Why are you not winning? And that's, of course, that's frustrating. So, but I think just with the backup, and I think that was the nice thing as well with Brunel. They always, because they've done the race now so many times, they knew this is an investment because we had a relatively young, unexperienced team. And it fitted in that sense very much in their philosophy, what they're doing in their business. They're getting young people, build them up, they lease them out to other companies. And that's basically what they saw in our project. And then, of course, when we started sailing that next leg, and I think it was one of these things as well, was not everybody came in the flow. And that's where you have to be as a team. Like what I said, everybody just realized we are good, but we have to get better, and we actually can do it. And I think that happened on the leg to Itagy around Cape Horn. Then we were really in that mode, and we really had the right balance in the team, and we knew how to sail the boat fast.
I mean, it was a step change. I mean, it really was, and suddenly.
Yeah, but that's for the outsiders. That's really for the outsiders, and that's what I said. We had already that feeling in the team on the leg before, even a little bit going into Hong Kong already, but we just knew we were making huge steps, and then all of a sudden it was just materializing. And it's one of these things as well. If you are getting fast and faster, sometimes you can cover up a little bit things when you maybe not doing that 100% right. And of course, that helps a lot as well.
What did you have any pressure during that, should we say, that first sort of half of the race, where, like you say, you're having to talk to sponsors, having to talk to people? Were you receiving pressure, maybe not from the sponsor, but from elsewhere, to make changes with the team? Did you have to sort of hold on to your belief that we've got the right kind of people, or as the skipper, were you being left alone at that point? We trust you. You're gonna get the best you can.
Well, of course, it's one of these things. I've got the responsibility to pick the team, and that's really fantastic. With also with Brunel, that you take whoever you think is the best. But what has happened even in the last race, when you start really late, you don't have time to build your team. And that was, of course, we had fantastic individual sailors, but not always everything is bonding 100%. And then you have to start listening, because I can say, I can work with him or her really well. And then all of a sudden, there's other people in the team who don't think it is working very well. So if you get that communication going, and I think that was happening with us, especially in the beginning stages, basically until Auckland, we were just saying, where can we make steps? Who fits really 100% in the team? What other person are we looking for? Who can maybe just give us that little bit of extra what we are not having? And that just came through talking with each other. It's not only me, because if I make decisions but the rest of the team is not standing 100% behind it, then it's never going to work. And when you're in deep troubles, then the team will fall apart. And I think that is that curve that we have been building and building and building. And I think one of the things, probably the people know, we had in both last races, we had actually like a mental coach in our team.
Sure.
And that was, I think it was one of our great assets, because not only for myself, I got a lot of backup from her, also from things what I probably didn't pick up. She was really a part of the team. Other people trusted it, and sometimes they didn't maybe want to say it to me. They spoke to her, and then via the back door it came to me. And then I could actually, we could challenge them. And when you're sitting in a debrief or just in a chat, to say, well, this came to my mind, and it was you. I just say Peter, because I know Peter Burling. Don't be angry with me. He doesn't care about what I say. But that was the approach what we had, and I think that was working really well.
How did you see those? I mean, those Olympic America's Cup stars, Carlo Hoosman, Pete Burling. How did you see them become offshore talents
Heroes.
in their own right?
I think you can call them heroes because they have got so much in them. And a guy like, I'm just now saying Peter Burling, Sailor of the Year, World Sailor of the Year. I don't know how many bloody medals he won and winning the cup, but he's just so down to earth. But they are so good. Him, Carl, and now we're just talking about these guys and Carlo. And there's other guys on board as well. Yeah. We shouldn't forget that Abby, fantastic. She was boat captain, took that responsibility. So it's everybody in the team. KP, if you're listening, I love you, and you don't want to hear that, but he's one of the best. So it's not all these individuals, but I think the thing with the new generation and the guys coming from the America's Cup and from the Olympics, they just are specialists in refining and getting the last little twitches out of the boat. And they did a fantastic job on that. And that was one of the things as well. Just in the responsibility roles, who's going to do what, they took it on and they delivered. We can say that. We didn't win, but they stepped up massively.
The final leg, we were on a 3-way tie. Dongfeng race team 1 point behind, but they have this extra bonus point for lowest lap time. So effectively, whoever wins or whoever beats who in that final leg, they're going to be the people that walk away with the trophy. That final leg, I mean, the tension and everything else, the showdown, I can't see it being repeated. For you, did you look at the weather forecast? Did you look at the routing? And did you think, hang on, this is going to be really tough to call?
Well, it was anyway, because we really didn't know where we were going. There was options in that leg for virtual waypoints and all kind of things. We had to go to the city of Aarhus here in Denmark. So there was so much land effect as well in place. And especially at that time of the year, you can have where I live, the northern part of the island of Copenhagen is on. I look out of the window right now and there's no wind. And 20 miles further down the coast, it blows 25. So there are so many local effects, and I think that was it's just one of these things. You have the weather, and we knew once we were on the western side of Denmark in the North Sea, it would be a little bit more predictable. But the part in the Baltic and in the Skagerrak, that can be so tricky in this year. And it was in the last race. It was exactly that, and we missed terribly out in the beginning. I think at one stage we were 20 miles behind Mafra and Dongfeng. But of course that's still, and then you have to keep plugging away, guys. And it's just one of these things. And that's just the whole team was fantastic in that sense. You're behind, but you just have to keep going. And because I maybe probably even mentioned the Newport finish. They say a day before Mafra was 100 miles behind us, and they beat us. They win the leg. So we knew it's not over until the fat lady sings, and that will be the finish line. So that spirit was all the time there. And then, of course, the moment came when we had to make a crucial decision, which model we're going to follow. And, of course, everybody talks about Dongfeng doing a fantastic job. And, of course, they did a fantastic job because they won. But that option was very clear on the table. But people should just remind in our position, because Mafra was at that stage leading the race. They were together with Dongfeng, a little bit ahead. We were a little further offshore, 5-6 miles behind them. But we had that speed and we were just reeling them in slowly but surely. And then we're sitting with KP and with Peter. We talked about, okay, what are we going to do? If we follow them, it's going to be probably very unlikely that we're going to pass them. Yeah. As well, we have the Arpège, that's the French model. We know Dongfeng is going to live with that French model. They're going that route. And we said, Mafra will stay with Dongfeng because they're ahead. Rule number 1, simple, stay between the competition and the finish. So we're taking, because there was only like 10 minutes difference. And of course, the difference was on the EC, the European model, was actually 10 minutes in advantage of us, even from the position where we were behind the other guys. So then we took that choice because that was first of all, it was the right choice, what we thought it was going to be, the prediction. But then the other thing was that we knew, or we just thought, my friend, they go the other way. So that's probably the biggest chance of actually winning. If we follow them, we're very unlikely even going to overtake them. And then all of a sudden, you see that little red dot on the horizon when you're getting close to the coast. And you say, okay, guys, we're not going to win this Volvo Ocean Race this year, but let's just keep fighting and do our best. And we got the force in that leg. Still, if you look back, we sailed very fast again this leg, but we just missed out in the beginning, and that was dearly and expensive.
I mean, that position report, that moment where you can see them, I'm wondering, was it's done, or was there a case of, okay, it's unlikely, but we can, like you say, with the finish in Newport and Mafre sailing, 100 miles to win by one boat length. Did you know we're not going to be able to do this, or were you still hanging on?
Because at that stage, I've been sailing a big part of my life on that coastline, and you just know, especially with the weather course nowadays, it was very, very unlikely, especially that time of the day, that it would, how we sail it, would crap out the breeze. So we just knew when we saw that the dot on the horizon and just the angle what they had it in the back at that stage. Of course, it's never over until, but I just knew in my heart they just keep the breeze until the end. And of course we kept a good breeze going in as well. So it's one of these things. You're not winning the race. Of course, you would love to win it in your hometown, or let's say home country. Yeah. But it's I think that says something again about the team, because we had so much obligation going on that week, and then there was one more import race, and there was still one trophy on the line, and it was only third place, and it was Axel Nobel was ahead of them, and we knew we had to beat them in the last import race, and if we would do that, then we would be on the podium on that as well. And we sailed a fantastic last event, and you're only as good as your last result. And so we won that import race and finished actually on the import series on the podium as well. So well done, Team Brunel. I say that to everybody who's listening. Hopefully you girls and guys are listening.
I mean, it must feel like it wasn't third. It was a hair's breadth. We were so close. Can you file it away with your other thirds, or does that one? Oh. A lot closer.
Yacht racing, eh? Very simple. It's yacht racing. You know what's going to happen? There's only one winner, and I think that's one of the things. That's always my approach. So sooner or later, it goes your way as well. And in this race, it hasn't happened yet, but in a lot of other events, and fortunately, I can say that I won a lot of races, and sometimes I was behind and came back, or was in the lead from the beginning, and you finish a fantastic event. So it's just, you have to accept, because if I had that crystal ball, I would be probably not even sailing. I would do a lot of other good things. But it's just, you have to just admit that other people have beaten you. And that's, of course, that's tough. And it's one of these things, what is always a challenge as well, because you like to come back. And you say, okay, what didn't we do right? What the other guys did better than us? Let's say that, but what can we learn from it? What can I bring with me for in the near future for other events? And it doesn't have to be the Volvo Ocean Race. It can be just our Wednesday night race here at the local club. It's just a matter of everybody has to keep learning. And of course, it's a complicated sport.
When you finished and you sailed ashore, you were very good, and you came up actually into our little makeshift studio on the Hard. And I remember I was talking to you and Xabi Fernandez as well. I was doing a little interview, and I think I asked you, what's your plans? How does that feel? Will we ever see you in the race again? And I remember you with utter confidence, total self-belief, said, "Oh no, I'll do the next race." And it was, go on.
I think that's one of these things, and it's funny enough, if you look at all the people who are racing this race, there's a lot of people who come back, and they probably have the same reason than me. They just love it. It's a fantastic way of making your living. I agree, but just all the aspects, the nature and the team, being out there in the middle of nowhere, and fighting the elements. That is something You have to be probably special for it. It's the same as guys and girls who climb the Everest. Why the hell do you want to climb up there? I would say, but they probably say the same about us. So it's in you or it's not, and I've got it in me.
So you're going to do, well, you're hoping anyway to do the next one. This is autumn 2021. And at the moment, you're sailing, you've got a 65, you're out sailing. This is childhood one. And I think it's rare sometimes in our sport that you are able, or in any sport, that you're able to really do some real good and kind of fly a flag quite high. And this foundation that you're sort of representing and showcasing to the world, it's interesting to hear you talking so passionately about getting young people into the teams and sort of shepherding them through. Was it a natural fit to be sailing for a foundation that works in a way to help children? Did it just feel like, oh, this is a double win?
Well, of course, it's I'm a father myself, and I think that's one of these things, and especially when you're getting older, you just see how much terrible things that are happening around the world to children, and even in countries, well-developed countries. If you see the numbers, it's scary. There is actually a really good thing about the coronavirus epidemic happening right now, because that happened, and there has been a lot of focus as well on abuse of children and violence against them. In a lot of countries you see now, there's a lot going on, and it is, unfortunately, it's happening because more people back home. But in a way, it's actually, it comes out more in the media. And of course, when we had the opportunity in Sweden, and it was actually one company called Sletto who said, we have this great foundation together with Pelle Norberg. He said, it would be an idea, we would like to put some money in, and you guys represent us for at least a year. And we have a contract till October with them to sail under the name and to make publicity for them. So that they don't pay a penny for it, but it's just one of these things. This has gone to our heart, and I think the Childhood Foundation is a fantastic cause, and we will see if they will continue or not. But we have to keep our minds open, and I think that's one of the things. It's never over until you got the money in the bank. I think it's a great setup, having a good cause. And so we just keep looking at other options as well, because if you put all your eggs in this one basket, then if it doesn't go your way, then you might just punch yourself in the face and say, why haven't we done that? So we're looking at other opportunities as well, because we're living in a free.
Sure. And I can imagine that getting yourself, as everyone always says, getting yourself to the start line, and that business side of running a team and the corporate side of it is a huge, huge challenge. If you weren't able to get your boat, your team, skipper, to the start line, would you watch leader for another team? Would you put yourself out there?
I probably won't. I say that very honest. I might do a leg or two. That's possible, but I don't think the entire race, because there's so many other opportunities on right now as well. And I think it's one of these things. I'm probably quite a strong character in a way, and it's just, I don't think it would be smart to put me together. I'm just saying, David Witt, for example. Even I think I love him. I think he's a great kind of guy. But we have probably two completely different styles. So that's probably not going to work. And I think as well, and if you have younger people, it will be quite a hard mix. And that's why I say, if you just come in for one leg or two legs, that's probably still a thing to do. But let's just aim for being myself on the start line, that I can run my own campaign, because that will make life way easier for myself as well.
Are you as forceful a personality, as competitive on your Wednesday night, on your Saturday afternoon racing in your local club? Are you able to sort of go, I'm going to take this race easy?
Nah, I think that's in us. You just, otherwise I wouldn't go racing. If then I could just sail from A to B, maybe have the Barbie on the back of the boat, and maybe a nice glass of wine. But that's, if you go racing, you want to win. If not, and then there's probably people out there who are racing and just for the joy and the excitement of it. But I think the moment that they have a win or more wins, then you're going for more. And I think that's one of these things. Once you are a racer, you're forever a racer and you like to win. And that's even when you're cruising. You see a little boat on the horizon. If I'm cruising with my family, I want to overtake that guy or girl who sails on the horizon. And hopefully they're way bigger than you are and then can sail past them. So I think it just sits in you, and that will never change.
It's a pleasure to hear you talk about your passion for sailing, and I can only wish you the best of luck. And for the sake of all the fans and myself as well, really hope we see you on the start line for the next edition.
We do our best for that.
All right. Cheers.
Take care. Bye.